Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 51 of High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson, and as always, I'm joined by my smarter half, Anna Ray Grabstein. It is Thursday, July 18th, 2024, and we have a great guest on today. We're going to be talking about the Cannabis Media Council, advertising, deprogramming, the stigma impacted on us by the war on drugs, and all those things. But before we get there, as always, I'm going to check in with my co-host, Anna Ray. How's the week been?
Yeah, the week has been wild and crazy. Things are not slowing down in the world of cannabis. I
Mm.
really have just been balls to the walls, getting work done, but looking forward to my time with you today where we get to kind of make sense of it all. Fun thing that's going on here in our home state of California is the state fair that happens in the state capitol in Sacramento this year has a big, huge cannabis activation. And while I haven't made it, I have been talking to a lot of folks who've been over the past few days. And big shout out to the Embark team. Lauren Carpenter, the CEO over there, was on the podcast probably about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they are leading the charge to sell, educate, and consume cannabis at the state fairgrounds for the first time ever, making a lot of history. And the crew over from Buddhist, which is the social review app that was founded by 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀, they also partnered with Embark in the state fair to do awards of cannabis
Yeah.
at the state fair. So
Also a previous guest.
also previous guests, and also like two different women CEOs that I'm getting to drop their names. So shout out to all the women CEOs that are doing cool shit in cannabis right now.
Amen.
It's been really hot in Sacramento, and I know that people are still going and partaking. So just excited. I hope that if you are local, there's still, I think, probably another week of the state fair going on that you can go check it out. So go
Yeah.
definitely consume some cannabis on state fairgrounds.
Amazing. Yeah. It's been hot everywhere though. I was just in Colorado over the weekend, visiting some folks in the industry, and we were definitely in the hundreds. And then I'd catch up with Diana Eberline over in Virginia, Washington D.C., and they're also in the hundreds and feeling the humidity. And I think we're all just a little summered out already, and it's still actually pretty early for the summer push. If my kids' summer camp schedule is an indication of it. Um,
For
so
sure.
I'm ready to get back to whatever normal life is, if there is a normal life anymore. I don't know. We won't get into politics, but yeah, everything is just a very fast treadmill right now. It feels like.
Yeah. Things at Fertosa positive?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I think I spend a lot of my time trying to predict what's going to be happening in the future, and I'm even on a podcast or a panel later today where we're going to be talking about the potential impacts of rescheduling, which we all know rescheduling itself is up in the air. Um, and it's funny because I was preparing for this panel, being like, "What are the impacts of rescheduling on manufacturers like Vertosa?" And just today, Canra released this request to Congress, basically saying we need guidance on essentially everything. It was a list of like 7 different things, but it's just the regulators asking for guidance on the impacts of rescheduling. Like, how is this going to change enforcement? How is this going to change rules? Are there going to be a new rule set that we also have to harmonize with the state by state rules? And so all questions that we as operators probably also should have. But if the regulators have them, it means that there probably aren't clear answers.
Yeah. Oh, the uncertainty and the opportunity within the uncertainty. These are
I
wild
think that's
times
why
to
we're all
live.
here, though.
Exactly. That's why we're all here. We like it. We're gluttons for pain and
Yeah.
punishment in the best kind of way. Well, let's jump into our conversation today. I'm really excited to bring on Amy Deneson. Amy is the executive director and co-founder of the Cannabis Media Council, which is a trade organization on a mission to deprogram the war on plants by ending mainstream media moratorium on cannabis advertising. Amy also co-founded an ad agency for cannabis brands, businesses, and operators called Pheno, and she's a fractional CMO for House of Puff. In her prior role, Amy led marketing at 𝗘𝗽𝗓, and she lives in New York. So welcome, Amy, to the podcast today.
Thank you, Anna Ray and Ben. Pleasure to be here.
How are things in New York? Is it still hot out there too?
I mean, yeah, we're melting over here as well, but we're getting through it, and we've got plenty of fun. Certainly, so there in spirit for the California State Fair. My co-founder Joyce Sonali will be there with members and Bark. Love their leadership. And so excited to see, the California State Fair embrace this agricultural product. And so, really cheering you on from New York. But New York is great. We're excited to see so many things coming online, as well as I'm here repping 𝗑𝗵𝗶𝘀. And so their season is certainly heated in a way that it hasn't been in the 20 years of its existence. And so really, lots of good things to celebrate.
The Bay Area just got a WNBA team. We got
I
the
know.
Valkyrie.
I can't wait.
I was looking at all their swag that they post on. Is that what merch? I guess.
Yeah.
Swag's a company thing. But the Valkyrie logo is pretty dope. I was certainly considering getting some.
I love the colors, and Anna Ray and I are chatting about it. How you can't keep it in stock. It's so dope.
It's really cool. Well, so the other thing that is on fire in New York, aside from the temperature, is the cannabis industry. It seems like we're finally reaching some critical mass in terms of dispensaries opening. It's not looking quite so grim as it was 12 months ago. We're going to talk about the Cannabis Media Council, but I'd love to get your thoughts on your home market and what you're seeing in the streets.
For sure. As someone who's been advocating for cannabis for, 20 years, really been part of it in an active way, for 10 years, this is the most hopeful, the most delicious, honestly, the most accessible market that we've seen yet. And so as we look forward to more dispensaries opening, more brands coming online, a variety, a consistency in the market, of being able to get products as people start to fall in love and want to enjoy these products. I just think it's all on the upward trajectory, and we're going to get in and talk about Cannabis Media Council and how we're really taking an approach to using the charms of advertising to help accomplish our goals. But also in New York right now, under review is an amendment specifically related to marketing and advertising, and looking to expand some of the channels, as well as ways that we talk about businesses and products within the regulated market, which I think is a really positive direction, that the regulators are listening, and that also we now have some data, and also businesses that are advocating for how we can continue to amplify these legal regulated businesses and introduce these products in these retail locations to consumers, as well as get to know cannabis anew for so many.
Wow, regulators listening and making things easier and more abundant and more. What was delicious is the word that you used. I love that. We have a couple partners in New York, and I'll validate that it seems like everything's been on the up and up this year. How many doors are now open?
That's a good question. I'd have to look. I want to say like 190, but don't quote me on that.
I think it's 109, not 190. Okay. Yeah, okay. But it's happening fast. It's like more opening all the time. And I think one of the major things that's happening is that because the doors are opening, the oversupply is maybe letting up a little bit. It sounds like what we're seeing is that it's starting to become a little bit more even. And that was the big problem, was that New York encouraged cultivators to get started, and then there was no outlet for product, and it created widespread desperation that nobody wanted to see. And I don't think that that was the regulator's intent. It's just the way that it all happened was just a big mess. Okay, well, enough about New York. Let's talk about the Cannabis Media Council. Will you share with our listeners what you guys are up to, kind of the founding story? Like, what exactly is the Cannabis Media Council?
For sure. And thank you for the opportunity to chat about it. So the Cannabis Media Council is a trade organization, and we serve to deprogram the war on plants and people. And we are doing that through the channel of advertising. And so advertising through mainstream channels is both, one, the goal to end censorship, to end moratoriums of people not accepting the business and the advertising within their channels, and help those existing publications understand not only the business case, but also, how they can feel comfortable and validated in working with these brands within legal markets. But then it's also to encourage advertisers within the cannabis brands and businesses to understand that this is a channel that is growing and ever more open to them. So advertising is a part of the marketing mix that has its own charms in that you really can be very transactional in nature with it. You can have within the guidelines of a publication and within the market that you're in, you can have a lot of control over the creative and the messaging that you put out there. And then depending on budget, you can really scale it up or down depending on how effective it is for you. So advertising as a channel has an opportunity to be a tool and a way for, whether it's the Cannabis Media Council as we run our own campaign, which I'll talk to you about in a moment, or brands individually, for them to get to market and also communicate in a compliant and also enticing way to their target market what they are offering. And so we took on advertising as an underutilized part of the marketing mix, but also because advertising has a long history of showing that when you have recency and frequency, when you have a saturation of message, that it really can shift hearts and minds. And so when we set about with this twofold mission of deprogram, flip the script on, we've seen an inundation of PSAs or of propaganda for the last 50 years, starting with Reefer Madness. We also have the skillet and the egg that so many people remember. And so we have a long history of anti-cannabis information coming out through advertising. And so the Cannabis Media Council said, hold on, why don't we fight some fire with fire and put out our own PSAs? And so we created a channel for PSAs to reach all 50 states, as well as issue full spectrum guidelines, which is an annual report that we put out to help publishers and advertisers get to know what is possible within, and also what is inspiring to help grow this channel between those two partners that are necessary.
So I want to talk about one of the campaigns that came out. So I'm high right now. I don't know if y'all saw this, but it's great. It's hilarious. It's been all over the place. There's all these different instances of it, but it's taking common phrases and making them positive. Showing people, or this one, it's like dirtbag, that's me. And just different ways that and noticeably people that are a little bit older, kind of enjoying cannabis in the different ways that they do so. Golf, right? And I just thought it was really incredible. So there's one is we could talk about the campaign itself, but I'm more actually interested in the how, because I thought a lot of these advertising channels were typically cut off to cannabis, and this was through Hearst Media and I believe in Esquire magazine. how did this all come about? Does that mean that channel is now open to cannabis for advertising? And yeah, just tell us a little bit about this.
Absolutely, and thank you for highlighting I'm high right now. This is our first campaign through the Cannabis Media Council. And exactly to your point, it's meant to be lighthearted. It also features our elders, and intentionally so. One, because people over the age of 55 and 60 are some of the most the highest consumers of our products, and also are overlooked in advertising quite frequently. And so one wanted to highlight this demographic as well as uplift the elders in our communities that are consuming, and yes, show them within an environment of them enjoying their life. So getting back on the golf course, or getting back into the garden, or swinging back into their old ways. Sunset strolls that have never been brighter, for another one of our elders, but also use language that's been weaponized. Language that has been, whether it's called dirtbag or that cannabis is a gateway. Gateway to what? Asks some of our elders. And so with that, flip and reclaim that language that's been weaponized, as well as feature our elders who are also leaders within many of our families. And so they have a normalizing effect that within the family structure, that if auntie's okay with this or grandma is okay with this, then it has a way of opening conversation within the family in a new way, and really talking about the products, what they're using, what's working for them. And we know that after being in the cannabis space, both prior to legalization and in legalization, it really is a word of mouth conversation as people start to get to know the plants anew and the products anew, but also what's effective, and why, for what people are consuming.
Yeah.
But back to the how'd you guys pull this off? I think that there's a few questions that I have about that specifically, and I want to understand, like, knowing that you're a marketing strategist and that you help companies also, not just in your seat as the Cannabis Media Council. When you look at national advertising, like an Esquire that gets distributed around the world, certainly all around the country, if you're a brand that is only distributed in 1 or 5 states, like that might not be the right channel for you. You guys, as part of a national campaign, I know that you've looked at yourselves in some ways like the Got Milk people or campaign, or the Beef It's What's for Dinner, just getting these categories out there. Makes sense to take a national distribution approach so that everyone everywhere is learning about cannabis or getting the message of the campaign. So I'm curious about how you pulled that off, but then I also am curious of how brands that aren't in 50 states are leveraging advertising, and what the channels are that make sense for people.
Excellent. The question of how, that's the magic. And a couple of years ago at this point, almost 3, I was leaving 𝗘𝗽𝗓 and starting Pheno, my ad agency. And I knew 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀, the co-founder of the Cannabis Media Council at this point, for many years, as being an absolute force in the California market and beyond. And, she called me one day and she's like, look, I see what you're doing for Pheno on the behalf of individual brands, businesses, and revolutions as we continue to advocate and legalize this industry. Is there something you could imagine for the industry as a whole? And I said, the short answer is yes. The channels, the pipes are being built, they're available. But the longer answer is, how do we make it the most impactful for the industry at large? And that answer was the Cannabis Media Council. And so really we came together with a twofold approach of building not only the question of how do we create a campaign or issue guidelines that serves the market as a whole. So starting with the idea that collaboration over competition is the core of this collective coming together, and understanding that we have a singular singular goal in which we must grow the addressable market. We must grow the amount of curious and confident and of age consumers that are open to, walking into a dispensary or learning about these products in a new way. And so as the focal point of, how we get now at this point over 400 operators within the space to raise their hand to say that they want to be part of this council, that they want to be with us. They're like, please be a tide that lifts this boat. And so with that, starting with the idea that is totally established in other markets. Anna Ray, you mentioned Got Milk for the dairy industry, Beef It's What's for Dinner. These are category level campaigns. So within advertising, it's a certain type of advertising that speaks to the category as a whole, as opposed to an individual brand's, products or aims, going to their individual website. And so the idea around creating a category level campaign is something that is substantiated by other industries, as something that keeps the regulated market or the markets top of mind, and also helps to drive as a awareness and also engagement with the legal market. And our grown up plan is to grow into a checkoff program, and so that would require federal legalization and also a whole host of other things to happen. But that is the ultimate goal of the Cannabis Media Council as an organization, is to be the pro PSA category level media part and uplifting this sector. And so once we really aligned around, we want this to be category, we want this to be the collective industry as a whole, we want there to be something that can unify us around humor, around lightheartedness, around the family. We then said, okay, we're going to lead by example with the I'm High Right Now campaign that will set not only an example for where and how you can advertise, and it's nuanced, and I'll get into that in a second, but then also set the guidelines to help inspire and set direction and also instill confidence that we as an industry do want to self-regulate and do want to put forward best in class, not only in creativity within the advertising sector. And so really thrilled that we won Clio's for this work. It's a validation not only that it was effective for the cannabis sector, but also within the mainstream advertising and marketing world as something that does represent creativity and crispness of message for best practices within advertising. And so with that, the melding of Joyce's leadership with so many organizations and businesses, and then my, at this point, 15, 20 years of marketing and advertising experience said, okay, let's bring it together. And the way that we wanted to launch was with a partner that has a history. And that partner is Hearst. So our first launch out of the gate was with a Hearst property because we also wanted to talk about the evolution from a publication that once supported Reefer Madness to a organization that now welcomes the cannabis sector. And so there are case studies of Hearst, not only with I'm High Right Now, being in the Connecticut Post, being in Men's Health, but also their support of Embark, another Cannabis Media Council member, and also their leadership at the State Fair, being on Meta. So through their relationships as Hearst as a property, they're able to help brands get online and onto channels. And then also fast forward, they're currently through Hearst newspapers in partnership with the Cannabis Media Council supporting the Reefer Madness musical that's in LA. So to go from supporting Reefer Madness, in the original context, to Cannabis Media Council running supportive ads for Reefer Madness, the revisal, currently through Hearst newspapers in LA is the kind of evolution that we want to acknowledge, but also inspire other people. It's okay to have been wrong about this plant. It's okay to have been wrong about how we talk about it or regulate it, but the point is to get it right, and the point is to make the best decision now, in order to move it forward. And so it's really through the relationships with these individual publishers. Hearst we started with, and then to your question, the print ad ran in the New York version of Vanity Fair. So Vanity Fair being part of Condé Nast. But Anna Ray, to your question, even though Vanity Fair is a national publication, there are ways when you buy media that you can reach just a specific market. So for example, the Vanity Fair print piece ran just in the New York market when adult use and the first dispensaries started opening. And so there's lots of nuances about the types of campaigns, types of products, where they can run. But the key takeaway is that whether you are a single state operator or you do have a national play because you're direct to consumer and maybe you're hemp derived in your products, and you can go through that channel, is that there's ways for you to get to market with mainstream advertising and see your goals met.
I had no idea that you could do targeted in magazine print. That's really interesting. I want to go back to something you said kind of selfishly. I appreciate that you brought up self-regulation. It's a conversation that has been top of mind as I participate in a lot of different associations. Can we talk a little bit about what it means to be a member of the Cannabis Media Council? Like, is there and I know there's guidelines that we'll kind of get into in a little bit here, but is there a code of conduct that these members are signing on to? And then are they funding kind of like this collective effort? Because we all know that cannabis companies don't spend a lot of money on advertising. Some of it's because they don't know how. Others is because we have such limited resources. And so, like, how are these global efforts going to be funded in the future?
It's a great question, and it's so important. The marketing in cannabis is categorically underfunded. And so, Anna Ray, you were asking before, with marketing, we do see around kind of 2 to 5% of an annual budget being allocated to marketing, which if we compare that to other industries, if we look at retail, those numbers are usually more like 10 to 12% of an operating budget. Or if we look at CPG or a direct consumer model that also is applicable, you see more in the lines, depending on the maturity of the business, really more around even 15 to 25%, depending on where they're at. So to look at 2 to 5%, it's if it's funded at all. I think there are quite a few cannabis businesses and operators that are just saying, it's everything we can do to get it on the shelf. And so I certainly, I feel that pain. I've been in that chair with those budgets. And also as a fractional CMO, do see how painful it is to not have enough money in marketing in order to really get your message out there and afford to be in the places that you want to be in. Which I do think that, rescheduling has a massive potential to impact, because with rescheduling, 280E would no longer be in effect, and therefore marketing could be a write-off. That would be an enormous help in terms of being able to see marketing as an investment, but also as a write-off. And so that would be a major impact for sure. And so looking at, how do we serve the members of the Cannabis Media Council? Precisely to your point, because many brands can hardly afford to advertise for themselves. The ask to advertise on a collective for everyone it's not the right time. So instead, membership for the Cannabis Media Council is really raising your hand to say, it's free with high values, to say, I have high values. We do have a manifesto. We do also encourage people to come in with the point of view of collaboration over competition. What might we create together in order to delight our consumers? Consumers are not, one brand only. We know this for our life. We consume lots of brands, not just speaking about cannabis, but, we consume, many products in our life. And so, with that, we are taking on, good faith. We're doing a bit of vetting for our members, but really what we're hoping to do is be of service. And so the way it's being funded is that ancillary providers, support within the industry, who are building their business in order to serve the cannabis sector, are our primary donors at this point. And so donors particularly being, it's tax deductible, which is a huge thing for us that we wanted to make sure we could offer, which is through our partner 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀. 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀 Studio allows us to provide tax deductible donations to people within, to people contributing to the Cannabis Media Council. And then all of our media is donated by our partners. So Hearst, we've talked about, Vanity Fair was donated. Surfside is a partner that has donated media in order to reach markets. And so that is how we subsist and exist. And then our goal is that we not only raise the awareness and the consideration for cannabis within markets. So we were in Missouri. We've been in all 50 states, just as a general note for the last year. But we have also had dedicated campaigns within Nevada, Arizona, Missouri, Minnesota, obviously New York, California, that we've talked about. And so, with that, also trying to, have and reach markets that are coming online in new ways as well. And so be of service there with our campaigns, but then also with the guidelines.
So let's dive into the guidelines. I think this is the biggest news in terms of what you guys have done recently. You just put out your refreshed 2024 guidelines called Full Spectrum Guidelines for Responsible Cannabis Advertising. We have a history of different types of products over the years getting in trouble for irresponsible marketing. Alcohol and tobacco are both examples that have been through various stages of pushback by the public, and as a result, we don't see tobacco ads on television anymore, and in social media, but we do see some types of alcohol ads, and both of those spaces have trade associations that are similar to what you guys are creating with the Cannabis Media Council. And the alcohol version gets brought up a lot. The Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, DISCUS, and they put out their responsible practices for beverage and alcohol advertising. And I looked through this in anticipation of this conversation today. And it seems like this, in many ways, is kind of table stakes for an industry that is highly regulated. Is that it's like, once I started looking through these alcohol regulations, it was like, oh, of course the cannabis industry needs to step up, and we need to do this also. And so it seems like you guys are serving a really important role in what is a step in the maturation of the industry and of the kind of professionalization and legitimization of what we're doing, that I believe will support, in a sort of domino effect kind of way, the other policy work that's happening at the state level and at the federal level. It's like when there's pushback on ending prohibition in states that still have it, the fact that your guidelines exist is the kind of thing that people want to be able to point to and say, hey, look at the ways that our industry is trying our best to be responsible stewards and to push consumer safety forward. And here's how we're doing it, even if you as a government entity are not going to help us get there. So I think it's clear why it matters. I would love to hear what the way that you guys have created this. I know that there's 7 key pillars, and I think it would be interesting to go through them and talk about these guidelines and just examples of how they're being utilized in the world. Just I'll give it to you on that. Let's hear about the guidelines.
For sure. Thank you for this. And you're right, it is table stakes. It's so table stakes that when I started to put together the cohort that originated the first edition of the guidelines last year, a mix of leadership who's been part of big beverage and also alcohol and spirits, as well as quick service restaurants, and how do we advertise to families, but also notably like not children. And then also people who are pros within the media and the creative space. And then also 3 sets of lawyers who have been part of crafting these regulations and these attestations within their own media organizations. And so brought together a cohort of 10 people to help craft these guidelines that, yes, on the one hand, to set 7 core pillars, they do seem table stakes, but then no one else wrote them down, right? And so like we have to start somewhere, and so we were like, okay, if not us, then who? And so when we set out with the guidelines, and yes, the first one is we recommend that legal operators be informative and help drive access to regulated products and businesses. Like just so foundational that advertising serves to help people become aware of and go to regulated businesses. The second one is that it strictly complies with regulating the governing laws and rules within, not only their state, but also the municipality. When we start to get down into the advertising where placement actually shows up, we're talking about lat-long zip codes, municipalities of where these placements are going to show up and be distributed. The third one.
Can we pause? Can we pause on the second one for real quick? Just because early in the deck, it kind of it talks to the evolving nature of the cannabis industry, and it's no secret to everyone that like right now we're in a very interesting time in the industry where like what is cannabis and hemp is cannabis, and it this particular one where it talks about the legality and what's allowed in different states gets pretty muddy depending on where you're standing or what part of the industry you're operating in, and so like how are you thinking about that? Like what is the best way, especially for say a cannabis company, and beverages are actually a good example because you have beverage companies that operate in the regulated markets in certain states. They operate across hemp. And then we won't talk about what they do outside of the country, but those are examples of companies that are trying their best to operate within the legal realm, but it's not always exactly clear what regulations state.
Exactly, and hence the point of wanting to be clear, but also give there are 2 checklists in the guidelines that start to spark these conversations that are precisely around not only geo-targeting, but also around age targeting and proof of audience. So really helping advertisers align with their media partners, and media partners do this all day long in mature businesses, or they're slicing and dicing streets, right? Of where they want to like show up, or whether as someone walks along a certain a part of Manhattan, that they get served an ad on their mobile phone that like someone else walking along in Missouri, like St. Louis, like would never see that ad, right? And so like the idea, just as a very like big idea for a second, to boil it down, is that targeting precisely is what media does. And so that's not a new conversation for your media partners when you're working with them directly, or you're working with an agency that specializes in cannabinoids or specializes in a type of media that you're interested in. This is an everyday conversation that's standard. What needs to be applied to it is what's legal for cannabis. And so, with regulations, anybody that's operating has to be, borderline obsessed with what's possible within their markets. But then there are also new tools that are coming online. One partner that we were excited to talk about in its infancy is Cannabis Regulations AI, which is using the ChatGPT foundation in order to keep regulations up to date, and also in a chatty function of like what's possible in New York or what's possible in Maryland, and to help become a resource and then link to where they can find out precisely what's possible. But generally speaking, this is a conversation first with a advertiser's legal team, and what are they comfortable, how comfortable are they with advertising in the paid channels, which do have a very different set of standards than, say, an organic or an owned or a PR and earned media channel. And so first it's legal. And so there's checklists within legal to make sure, within the guidelines, to make sure that people are having those conversations. But then secondly, with media, is really looking to say, I have to be X amount of feet from a school, or I have to be within this municipality, and having those very nuanced conversations. And then within this, the creative needs to include this disclaimer in order to be here. So with people, it is complicated. I'm not in any way shying away from the complication of it. But there are tools, there are resources, and there are ways to guide through the conversation so that we can make sure that we're being compliant, but also as streamlined, as efficient as possible.
Makes sense. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Let's keep going.
Yes.
Number 3.
So 3 is all about adult use, intentionally being not only targeted through the channels, but also creatively to appeal to consumers of legal age. We certainly are very aware of 18 plus and hemp-derived conversations in most environments, 21 plus for most, but then also leading to the next one. With the 4th pillar is that we also want to make sure that we are honoring our medical patients and our medical programs, and acknowledging not that we're advertising to children by any means, but that children are affected and need medical cannabis for some of their ailments. And so how do we have how do we issue directional guidelines around, if you are making a product that serves a patient at whatever age they are at, that we are reasonably within those publications, reaching their caregivers, reaching their doctors and their practitioners, to know that this is legal and available for the patients within their care.
So let's talk about this a little bit. Like, I want to double click on this whole thing about, first, the pillar number 3 about not advertising to children and focusing marketing for people that are legally permitted to use these adult use products. This is like an endless debate when you are working with a creative team in cannabis, and whether you're designing packaging or you're designing an ad. There's this spectrum, like full spectrum, like your guidelines are named. There's a spectrum of opinions about, does this appeal to children or not? And there doesn't seem to be same opinions. It's not a mathematical equation. It's not like this plus this equals appeals to children. We've started to see some states say things like, if someone is famous and they've been in a movie that is PG or less, or bright colors, or cartoon characters, or animals, or caricatures, all of those things count as appealing to children. Do you guys wade into this debate, helping people to figure it out? Is there an AI out there that we can blast a piece of creative to and be like, do kids like this? How do we answer that question?
It's really nuanced, and this is where I think we're going to still need to rely on us humans in all of our holistic feeling, thinking, breathing, concerned, but also creative selves. Is that you're right? There is no template for this. Will just not appeal to children. One of our stances that we took is that we featured our elders, and like demonstrably appealing to our elder population and the intention there. But like, to your point, we can learn earlier too of like, we've seen councils come in order to help self-regulate and to inspire and to give good direction, and also to build confidence with our regulators, that we can learn from tobacco, we can learn from alcohol, we can learn from how sugar is advertised. And so I do think that there's lots of lessons that we can take in and apply. And the less, I'm not answering your question directly because there's no template. But what we have to do is bring our full self and our best self to the table to realize and to affect that we know that it's not helpful for children to consume cannabis. And so how do we do our very best to keep it out of their hands?
Yeah, what comes up for me as we're talking about this is thinking about Juul and what happened with Juul and teenagers getting so excited, and even the people that were inside Juul, like the documentary on Netflix shows, and they didn't set out to market to kids. It's just that the marketing that they created, that they tried to make hip and cool for adults, happened to also appeal to teenagers, and that it's just complicated consequences that come from that. Okay, well let's.
But it's also it's important for us to be in partnership with our point of sale as well, and so there is just the reality that that we all need to be part of protecting our kids, and that even if something did unintentionally appeal, just to make sure that they're not sold to or that they don't have access to it through unregulated means is the most we can do as a community.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Tell us about number 5.
Yes. And so onwards to number 5 is that we really want advertising and marketing to represent the diverse cultures and experiences that are connected with this plant and product. So really to emphasize that for all of time, that cannabis has been part of people's cultures and experiences. And so how do, within the creative and the visual, through audio podcasts, bring in the many languages, the many terms and vernacular and vibrancy that's connected with the plant through. And so, one thing that was really important for us is to bring out a Spanish version of our campaign. And so that also launched this year. And we're so excited to see it picked up in Puerto Rico and also celebrated through some of our predominantly Spanish-speaking communities. And then the sixth is that we within the cannabis space, and as we're talking about, our products, whether we have to activate our creativity to get around regulations, which I've seen some really fantastic examples of that. And we also include case studies within the cannabis sector, but also, within the full spectrum guidelines, but also CLIOs, as we mentioned before, has a whole cannabis award section. So if you're looking for inspiration, but to really look at not only how do we creatively do this to get the message out, but also do have creative advertising and marketing that we're proud of, and that creativity is so connected with this plant and the effects of it. And so, how do we bring that to life through our advertising? And then, lastly, 7, which I know is a bit of a lightning bolt, is that advertising strive to be green. And I'm not talking literally the color palette that's certainly been adopted and used, but we do everything within regulations and compliance to make sure that we're taking care of our earth, taking care of the world that this plant requires in order to grow, and do everything we possibly can through our advertising efforts to not create more waste, and to make sure that we're efficient and cognizant of our environment through our promotional efforts.
I really appreciate this, and the 7 pillars do make a lot of sense as, like, guiding principles. As we got deeper into the list, there was a couple where I'm like, "Okay, that really definitely makes sense from the media council's perspective," and I just you know, the more diverse that the industry becomes, I think there's a opportunity for brands to be more hyper focused and um really I think it was the sixth no the fifth pillar that we are talking about diversity and cultures and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking of a particular Americana brand that Anna Ray and I have talked about in the past. And how does that kind of fit into this narrative where brands, as the industry grows, may choose to be hyper specific in who they are selling their brands to?
Certainly, and we're going to see not only specificity and segmentation is a marketing word
Mhm.
of brands appealing, and I think that is going to be great. And as we get more and more variety and have whether it's through flavor profiles, whether it's through where their products are able to be sold. I think we're going to see lots of appeal and specific focus on wanting to appeal to let's call it women in this within this segmentation, or people that that I the one product I have to say that I absolutely adore, that I love, that's come into the Illinois market, and it's through our founding board member, Allison Disney, who is also with our creative agency of record, Sister Mercy, and part of the really building this campaign from the creative side of it, is her new company, Mix, which is flavored infused sugar, essentially. And so it's a product that can be added either to mocktails or to ramen. And it's a spicy ginger is with the flavor that I'm thinking of right now. And so, as a product and the adaptability that it has, but then also for how it could be included in different products, I think is just going to be, back to the earlier point of delicious, is going to be embraced in different ways and appeal to different people. And the product is already so such a variety, from flour to what I just mentioned, which is flavoring, infused flavoring. So like it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I want to just call out to anyone who's listening that you should definitely go and download the whole guidelines. It's over 100
Mhm.
pages. The pillars are one small part. There is some really great stuff that we're not going to have time to talk about today. I love that you guys created a section of just talking about words and how we use the words cannabis and marijuana and hemp and dope and whatever else, like thinking about how we come forward and who we are when we show up is really important. And the level of personal responsibility or individual business responsibility that it takes right now because of the time that we're in also can't be understated. And I think that the lessons from the past of other industries are one of the things that I'll come away with this conversation thinking about, is like, we need to realize that other industries fell in it and they made big mistakes, and it put them in a
Mhm.
situation where things became way more restrictive. And if we want to make sure that we keep these channels open and growing as opposed to becoming more prohibitive, looking to the work that you guys are doing could be really useful for folks. So I just want to thank you for sharing the work that you guys have been doing. And I think we are moving towards the end of our hour. And that means that it's time for our last call with you, Amy. So we want to turn the mic over to you for your last call. What would you like to leave our viewers with today and listeners?
And Anna Ray, thank you. Ben, thank you for not only amplifying the good work of the Cannabis Media Council, but also having this great conversation today. And so thank you for that. The one thing that I would love to punctuate Anna-Ray, yes, please download the guidelines. They're free for now for downloading. And so we are providing them at the cannabismediacouncil.com at our website. And so please do dig into them, reach out to us with any questions. And then also the last thing as an appeal is the Cannabis Media Council is 100% volunteer. Everyone is donating their time, their expertise, their network, their channels, money, media inventory to making these campaigns happen and these guidelines happen. And so if you are in a place where you can donate to the council, we also accept donations at cannabismediacouncil.com. It's a tax-deductible donation through our partners at 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀. And so thank you. Thank you for this great conversation and continuing to evolve to create this industry that we want to experience.
Amy, thank you so much. This has been super informative. We really appreciate the work that you're doing. The programming is incredible. Like I just love seeing the creativity come out of the group that you have. And another shout out to 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀. She's been a longtime friend of the show. Another woman leader, guest of the show.
She's the person that introduced me and you, Ben.
That is true. That is true. Joyce. It all starts with Joyce, and also Amy now. But thank you, Amy. We'll put the link to the site in our show notes, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, Anna-Ray, another one in the bag. That was fun. I'm excited to see what comes out of this. We need something equivalent to that. Like, this is your brain on drugs, like the frying egg in the pan.
But yes, I think that's what they're doing, right?
Equal opposite. Yeah, exactly. Very good. All right, everyone. What did you think? Let us know. Put it in the comments. Reach out to us. Ask questions. We'll bring Amy in and have her answer them. If you want to see anyone else on the show or have us cover if you want to have us cover any other topics, please let us know. Thank you for continuing to promote the show, liking, subscribing, and doing all the things. Thank you to our teams at 𝗖𝗵𝗋, who we got to meet the other one last week. That was awesome. And then, of course, my team at 𝗧𝗵𝗀. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and keep your spirits high. That's the show.